glad to be with you from SEC Media Days and happy to visit with our friend Matt Moscona. Richard Cross and Brian Haydad with you on this. What is today? It's Monday.
It's Monday.
Day one of SEC.
We got a long way to go,
I'm not
buddy.
supposed to be doing the what day is this on Monday.
Come on, man.
What's up, man?
I'm actually happy to be back. Sometimes this week, no one should feel sorry for us. We talk about sports for a living. It's a really good way to pay your bills. But sometimes this week can be a little bit of a grind. But I'm missing it last year. It's absence makes the heart grow fonder sort of thing. I'm glad to be back and see a lot of familiar faces and to have the opportunity to really have a ramp up to a full, hopefully normal college football season.
Yeah, I've never had a lot of sympathy for the cynical people that are like, "Oh, it's a circus." Well, okay, don't go.
Don't go.
Stay home. It's
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get mad at you.
Don't show up. You can go to the beach for 4 days.
We sit in air conditioning talking about football, and then afterwards we're all going to go have some beers with our friends. Nobody should feel sorry for us.
Isn't that the best part about this week? It's like I tell my audience all the time, like, this is basically an excuse for the print media who sit up in the main room and have every guest, every coach, every player come to them. Like, you sit there, they talk to you, you write stories, and then you go drink on the company dime. Like, it's a great week for you guys.
Yeah. They
Radio Row, we're the hustlers. We got to go run and get every guest we get.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
It is.
And we've got Matt Moscona from ESPN Baton Rouge. You said something a second ago that I think we're not talking enough about, how it feels like it's supposed to, the normal ramp up. You get through the 4th of July, you get to media days, there's a week off, camp starts, and then it's like this sprint to December.
And we're still so close, but it feels still removed from 2020. And remember, we didn't even start the season until October. It's some of that stuff that, like, you know what I mean? Like,
you blocked that out of your mind.
Like, you played to the end of December, and it was such a bizarre thing. I mean, I commend everybody with the league office. I know Greg Sankey said so many times last year, we're building the bridge as we cross it, and it felt like that.
Yeah.
But they were, as a collective in the SEC office, they were determined to play the season and to find solutions. And not everybody was a year ago, and the SEC was, and they led the charge. This is way more comfortable, and I know that a lot of the conversation today is still about a COVID variant, and we saw in the College World Series with NC State that, their season unfortunately coming to an end. And I think it's a reminder that there's still the possibility that things could change or be affected throughout the course of the season, but the other thing, when you just look at an on-field standpoint, I mean, last year teams didn't have spring football. New coach, Mike Leach is fascinating because, and Kiffin as well, but Leach came in ran this whole new offense, had no spring football to ramp up to it. New players, new system, new everything that was so counter. Like, what's it going to look like now with, as we say, like a normal lead-up, with a full spring, with an off-season workout, with a traditional preseason that everyone's accustomed to? I think you're going to see some teams make extraordinary leaps this year from a year ago because of that, because fitting into that normal is going to make them more comfortable.
Is LSU one of those teams?
It better be. It better be, because losing 5 games in Baton Rouge, especially with all the other ancillary things going on around the program, it's a very negative situation. I think LSU is a team that is talented enough to win any game on its schedule, except maybe in Tuscaloosa. But I also think that they're disjointed enough in spots where it wouldn't surprise me if you said, hey, LSU's going to lose in Starkville, or LSU's going to lose in Oxford, or LSU's going to lose at home to A&M or Florida. Like, none of that would surprise me. I don't know how much you guys pay attention to the point spreads, but I mean, LSU is going to be within a field goal in probably 5 or 6 of its games as far as the point spread. I mean, you're talking about half your schedule is going to be a coin flip.
So we did I was talking with Barrett Salee about this earlier. We did the whole best case, worst case thing on Friday afternoon. Like, if everything goes right, best case, I had LSU at 11.
I agree.
If everything goes wrong and it explodes, it could win 4 or 5.
5. Yep.
And I have no idea.
There was no team in the league with a greater variant than of success and failure than LSU this year. It's just
Is it because of the other stuff, though?
What do you mean?
I mean, so I've described LSU kind of outside looking in. It's like it's a powder keg. And you've got the Ed Ogeron element and the staff turnover and the Title IX investigation and the NCAA investigation and a team that at times looked like it mailed it in a year ago. And, how's Ed going to push the buttons? Because 2 years ago he pressed all the right buttons, and last year it was a disaster. And so we're sitting there, and if the spark comes, it might just blow up spectacularly.
Yeah.
But if they're able to avoid the spark, they may be in Atlanta for the SEC championship game.
I think that's very well stated. I think this LSU team has so many questions still. Like, for example, the offensive line. You were going to return all 5 starters. Now you just lost your left tackle who transferred to Kentucky. But you're returning 4 or 5 starters. And you would think, man, that's awesome. Continuity, veteran players. Well, you returned 4 starters from a line that was awful a year ago. Are you better just because they're back? I don't know necessarily. Those guys have to improve. I would say the same about linebacker. I mean, LSU at linebacker and safety last year was as bad as I've ever seen LSU be at linebacker and safety. It's not hyperbole. LSU allowed 35 points a game last year. That's the worst in the history of the program. Like, you've got a lot of guys back at those 2 positions, but are you any better? So they're going to answer in the affirmative to some of these things. Like, is Durante Jones going to be a good defensive coordinator? Well, could he be worse than Bo Pelini last year? Probably not. But Durante Jones hasn't been a defensive coordinator since 2009, and that was at the Division II level. Let me remind you, in 2009, that was 2 years before LSU and Alabama played a 9-6 ball game, something that feels like a completely different universe in college football. So, can that guy call a defense in the – maybe. Jake Peets has never called an offensive play. He's of the Joe Brady tree. Will it work? Maybe. So you have all of these questions, and – generally, if you just split the difference, I think what's going to happen is some of those things we're going to answer affirmatively, and they're going to be awesome. Some of those things aren't going to work out great, and it's going to cause them some problems.
And so they win 8 or 9.
I think not. What I've said is 9-3. I think LSU loses at Ole Miss. I think they lose at Alabama, and I think they go 2-1 in their home games against Florida, Auburn, and A&M. I think they probably lose to either Florida or A&M at home. So I think that's how LSU ends up at 9-3, and I think 9-3. Provided the Title IX lawsuit and everything going on off the field around LSU is resolved.
That's okay this year.
Maybe not, Richard. I don't think people really understand the severity of what happened and what is still looming. You were talking about the U.S. Department of Education is investigating LSU. You were talking about multiple lawsuits.
Okay, when did that set in for people? Because Haydad will vouch. We were talking about this early on, and when the Title IX started popping up, I remember saying, hold on, we're headed in the direction of an investigation from the United States Department of Education. That's the USDOE. And I mentioned that to somebody that covered LSU at the time, who was like a good reporter, and like, I don't know about that. I was like, no, do you realize? So when did it set in for whether it's people that cover LSU or LSU fans or administrators or coaches?
I think there's some. Well, from fans and maybe some people that cover the team, maybe they still don't fully understand the severity of it. Because maybe it's just sort of the cynical nature of this where we just assume people in high positions are going to get a pass. I mean, generally, that's right. I mean, coach or player, great athlete, like something pops up, it gets brushed aside. Like, this isn't that. Like, this is the United States government, the Department of Education that's investigating your failure to properly handle allegations of sexual assault and rape. Like, this is so far beyond.
And not once.
Yeah, right. This was pervasive behavior over a decade under both Les Miles and Ed Ogeron. Like, this is very, very, very severe. Like, I don't think people really understand outside, some in Baton Rouge and around, but even beyond, like, just how sincere this is. So, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a situation where you have decision makers at LSU who want change made, people fired for cause, including the head football coach right now. Now, that's obviously not a unanimous decision, which is why it's still in place, but that sentiment exists. And you throw on top of it another subpar football season, and now you have that snowball rolling.
Derek Stingley Jr.,
That's a weird transition. I'm sorry. I didn't really give you much of an
No, it's okay. I just decided
It's
to
a
go
weird
with-
situation down there, though. I mean, it's the way it has to be. You go from football to the U.S. Department of Education, back to football.
Well, and I don't know that we've got time to fully. Let me throw this out there, and we'll take a break and then come back and talk about it. I think Derek Stingley Jr. last year was an All-American in reputation only.
Okay.
First team unanimous All-American, got a chance to, match Tommy Casanova as the only guy that's been a three-time first-team All-American at LSU.
Yeah.
Do we get freshman year Derek Stingley Jr. in this junior season? Matt Moscona will answer that question in Baton Rouge. If he was talking to us on the phone, it would be on the Farm Bureau phone line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team at Mississippi Farm Bureau. So I set it up before the break. I said Derek Stingley Jr. was an All-American in freshman year reputation. There's no question his freshman year was best cornerback in the country.
Yeah.
Last year, some injuries, missed a couple of games, didn't have a single interception. You can try and tell me it's because nobody threw at him, but I don't think that's entirely true.
It's a big part of it.
Part of it.
That's why Elias Ricks did on the other side.
And he was really good.
And LSU's safety play last year was absolutely horrendous.
And you think that hurt the corners or hurt Stingley in particular?
Absolutely. Well,
do you disagree with my entire sentiment there?
no, but listen, that's a product of awards in general.
Sure.
Listen, in 2019, Derek Stingley was the best defensive back in college football. Grant Delpit won the Thorpe. But in 2018, Grant Delpit was the best defensive back in college football. And it's like a lot of times it happened with reputation. The problem LSU had in its secondary last year was not Derek Stingley. The problem was when Ed Ogeron brought in Bill Bush as a safeties coach, Corey Raymond, who is forever the godfather of DBU, however you want to phrase him. He's the guy that all these guys want to come play for. They respect him so much. They split the safeties and the corners. Corey took the corners, and Bill Bush went and took the safeties. And the way someone explained it to me, it's like having an offensive line coach where the guards work together and then the tackles go work together, and then they come together and they're supposed to make it. It just doesn't make sense. But
sure,
you had a disjointed mess last year. If you go back and watch any LSU game, and you'll see guys with their hands in the air like the complete lack of communication with Bo Pelini and his staff and the players was appalling. I mean, it was. LSU has enough talent, and Derek Stingley is the least of my worries on this football team.
Fair.
He's the guy. Look, he's changed from 24 to number 7. Just put 7 on an island, and you're just going to cut half the field away and just be like, "Hey, man, you got it over there. We'll figure everything else out over here." I don't. Is there going to be a play where Devontae Smith one hands in the end zone, leap? Yeah, you want to know why? Because he's a freak show too, and he made a great play.
Sure.
But are guys going to routinely beat Derek Stingley? No, he's playing a different game than most.
Yeah.
We asked Barrett earlier. We were talking about the quarterbacks, Max Johnson and Miles Brennan. Does it matter? Does it matter who that guy is?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So he said no.
No, here's why it does.
Okay.
Because those two guys stylistically are very different. Miles Brennan has a better arm. I don't even think that's debatable. Even last year, Miles has the best arm of any of the guys on the team. But Miles no one's going to confuse him for a mobile quarterback. You're not going to design plays for him to use his feet. Max Johnson is a great athlete. He's one of the best athletes on the team. You can utilize him in the running game. So it absolutely matters for what you're trying to achieve and what you want out of your quarterback position. So are they just trying to carbon copy 2019, the Joe Brady offense? If so, Joe Burrow used his feet. They had designed runs for Joe. Some of the biggest plays of the season, they converting on 3rd and long in Tuscaloosa to seal the game was a quarterback draw. For Joe Burrow scored a touchdown in the national championship on a quarterback draw. I mean, that was a big part of that offense, and that's not something that I think Miles Brennan does particularly well that they would design for him. But I also think Miles Brennan's going to be the starting quarterback week 1 against UCLA. And if he plays well, he's going to keep the job throughout the year. The question is, can he play well enough to keep the job throughout the year?
Matt Moscona, ESPN Baton Rouge, last thing for you. To me, the most impressive thing about Nick Saban is not winning national championships. It's the ability to keep continuity from year to year. He loses coaches. It's just kind of maybe a little minor speed bump. They have 9 guys drafted. They just reload because they've recruited at an exceptionally high level. LSU has recruited at the same level, but or close to the same level. There wasn't the year-to-year continuity in coaching staff. Like, new guys come in and it just works out smoothly.
Yep.
And it didn't feel like the plug-and-play thing in terms of a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys, despite there being a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys. Was that a one-year blip, and they figured out how to do that, or this rotation again of a bunch of new coaches and some players who are going to slide in?
I mean, that's the question for LSU. Was 2020 a one-off?
And so I didn't mean to editorialize there.
No,
I was trying to
I know what you mean. But that is the question. And it can't. I'll put it to you this way: it can't be worse than last year. It just can't. Like, the part of the issues that sprung up a year ago started last summer. And last summer, our country went through an awful time of civil unrest, and that permeated almost every facet of life, and LSU football was no exception. And they had major internal issues, player to player and player to coaches. This is something I talked about a bit last year. Most people weren't ready to hear it. Now more people are talking about it and acknowledging it. There was a gigantic disconnect. LSU players marched from the locker room to the president's office on campus last summer without their head coach. That was by design. I mean, it was a problem.
So that was Matt Moscona. A couple of segments there. A lot of really interesting insight into what's going on in and around the LSU program. The expectations are high. The expectations are always high. The question is, will they live up to the expectations, or will it be a season that is more like last year? 5 o'clock.